Welcome to another edition of the Eye on Life podcast. I am your host, Brian Boyer, and we are, I don't want to say we're switching things up too much. We're continuing the trend of amazing guests, of course. But today we're going to talk a little bit about business and startups, but a little different angle than what you might be used to. We are going to talk about kind of business and life, because I don't know about both of you. Henriette, Rachelle, excuse me. See, I knew I was going to do that at least once. And Rachel really should not be that hard of a name to say, but clearly I have issues with it because it looks like Rachelle. But nonetheless, Rachel, we know it's Rachel. So I want to ask you guys, I want to ask you both a question. Now, out of the day, right now, you guys are both MIT grads, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. So we know there's a lot of brain power here today. From a percentage standpoint, over the course of the day, right? Out of 100%, okay, how much would you say you either are working or talk about work? How much does it impact your life? And I want accurate. Again, if you weren't MIT grads, I might say, okay, you can give me approximate. But but both of you, I want accuracy here, because that's what I expect from MIT grads. So, what would you say are the percentage of your days either spent working or talking about work? Very curious about this.
74.2%.
I'm glad you got the decimal, the percentage in there. That's perfect. I love it. That's great. Rachel, what about you?
Yeah, I was going to say like 95%. Because even if I'm not working, I'm still thinking about what we're doing. So.
Come on, you sleep more than 5% of the day.
So another question I want to ask you both, because this is where I know, I'm starting to lose my mind over the course of the day, right? How often do you have work dreams? Like where you're dreaming about something, maybe it's good, maybe it's bad, but I always have these dreams of, like, the PowerPoint not working, or something that was due a week ago and I don't have it done. I always have these dreams, and fortunately they're not usually realities, but I'm wondering how often you dream about work.
Actually, not that much, because I have implemented a method for myself that things that are like heavily kind of in a loop on my brain, I write down before I go to bed, so that I can take them off the plate, right? And then I fall asleep, and usually I don't dream about work.
You're very lucky.
It might be particular events when it's especially tense or something like that, but usually no, I'm not dreaming about work.
I wake up in a cold sweat. Rachel, I don't know about you. Do you ever dream about work? Maybe?
I haven't had that yet. I hope I don't.
Well, I hope you rest. See, now I hope I didn't put it in your brains now for tonight. Now you're going to sleep tonight, and you're going to dream about
I should say that before going to sleep, I am I try to stay away from my computer for like maybe a little bit and read books, but they're usually related to work. So other than that,
Well, I just hope you don't have nightmares about this podcast. That's really the key. So I want to welcome you both to the show, Henriette Fleischmann and Rachel Villalon, who is both co-founders of Hosta Labs. And we're going to get to know both of you in just a second. Just a couple of shout outs here. As most of you know by now who listen to the show, mustny.com, COVID masks, if you're looking for holiday gifts or protect yourself or your loved ones. Chris Bossert, Monica Perez Bossert out in Western New York. I imagine there's got to be some students, grad students, workers from MIT that want to stick these masks on and go to work and do their thing. So, definitely Chris and Monica are the ones for that. They're entrepreneurs. They are a fellow startup of yours. They're very innovative, and the masks they're cotton. They're very actually I don't know why I'm saying they're cotton. They might not be cotton, but they're very comfortable. And wear those masks, especially this time of year. We're out there. It's tough to tell sometimes what is COVID and what is maybe the flu or just a scratchy. Are you guys finding that too? That's the other thing I'm finding with COVID that's annoying to me. There are a lot of things about COVID. Anybody has a scratchy throat, they think they have COVID. I understand the precaution that people need to take. I appreciate that. But I feel like every time, especially my kids, right? Oh, my throat hurts, my nose is running, I think I have COVID. I don't think I should go to school.
Yeah, I guess being cautious about it is not the worst thing to do, right? I mean, in the end, it's life dependence on that.
I'm not buying it, but anyway, get your masks. Mustny.com. They're tremendous. They're easy. They're cost effective. So definitely thank you to Chris and Monica Bossert for their sponsorship of the show. I also want to call out. We have some new listeners this week. We had a spike in. Have you guys ever been to Las Vegas?
Yes.
Probably a lot of good shows out there. And when I say shows, I don't mean like entertainment shows. I'm talking about like trade shows. Although what you do on your personal time is none of my business. But a lot of great trade shows in Las Vegas. Paradise, Nevada, which is, it looks like it's like right there. It's like an enclave of Las Vegas. A spike in listenership out there. Again, I always say it could be one person that just keeps hitting the button, but several downloads this week from Nevada. So I appreciate the love there. Thank you for listening wherever you are, whatever city or town or village or municipality you're in. Thank you for listening. So Hosta Labs is a startup. In full transparency, Henriette, Rachel, and myself have been doing some work together lately, and I really appreciate you guys being on the show. You guys are very unique in what you do. You have, as I mentioned before, you guys met at MIT.
That is correct.
And before we get into what is Hosta Labs and how you came up with that name, I know the answer, but I want you to tell our audience as well, because I find that to be a very unique name. Sounds very like garden-like, garden, flowery, right? And I think there's a connection there. But how did you guys meet? And how did you, I imagine you probably at least liked each other to a point to get together and actually have, start this business together and have, the partnership. But tell me how you met and kind of how that flourished into what you have today.
Yeah, I'll start off with that. So prior to MIT, I was an architect. I was frustrated by the lack of the innovation and simplicity in the area. So I went to MIT for a master's and PhD to change that. It was there that I was working on patent pending algorithms. Knew we had something here. Then I met Henriette, which she can talk about.
Yeah, I went to MIT to recalibrate, actually. So I had a fabulous corporate career, but my father passed away from cancer, and that changed my perspective on life. So I went to MIT to think about my next step, like my next chapter, so to say, right? And that year just helped me heavily to rethink certain things. And I was looking heavily into entrepreneurship because I felt the urge of driving a stronger impact. And so I spent a lot of time in an institution called the Martin Trust Center, just the Center of Entrepreneurship at MIT.
Yeah, and so at the time I was looking for a business development person. And so after having spent several months conceptualizing an idea and building some prototypes, at MIT, there's an institution called the Martin Trust Center of Entrepreneurship. And then very manually, I had written on the opportunity board or the wall of opportunity, putting a posting saying that I was looking for someone in business development. So I took a marker, wrote that down, and Henriette was the third person that I talked to. And she fascinated me, just because she was the only Sloan business student I knew who had actually taken courses at the computer science department.
That's fascinating.
I was still pursuing my MBA at that point in time. And once we met, we started out experimenting how it is to work together, right? And 3 months later, we discussed me coming on board as a co-founder. Marvelous opportunity, rest is history.
So did you, now obviously when it comes to dynamics, right? We know that in the history of business, when businesses start, sometimes it's smooth, right? And the partners get along really, really well. And other times there is a period of adjustment. Did you guys click right away? I imagine it's obviously a good thing if you do have some disagreement, some healthy disagreement, right? That's how you change it. That's how you guys are disruptors. So did you guys ever disrupt each other, or was it always, did you guys always kind of bond right from the very beginning?
Good question. I can take that one, Rachel, if you want. We are so complementary to each other, right? We instantly understood how we each contribute individually, but also jointly to the business. And together we're so powerful that it's just amazing to see how fast we can move forward and what impact we can make. And I would argue, coming to your later part of the question, our key to success is actually to disagree, to express each other's view, to make sure that we put each other into the different minds, like see things from a different perspective, right? To avoid cognitive bias. And I think that has been literally key to our success, because only then, especially for very important decision, we actually come up with a decision, and yet still at a high speed. It's pretty cool to see that. So yes, you can argue there is obviously also discussion involved, but always constructive, always kind of, have you considered this kind of view, etc. You know what I mean? And that makes us really, that makes us a dream team.
And I think that's a great point. I think that it's very important when it comes to when it comes to a culture of an organization, whether it's a small startup or a larger corporation. That's I feel like that's almost like breaking news. It's okay to disagree.
Oh yeah.
It can be helpful. It doesn't have to be personal, right? And I think that unfortunately it doesn't always go that way. But let me ask you this question, and I have to ask you guys. I'm intrigued by MIT. I think going to school, first off, that Boston Cambridge area, there's a lot going on there, right? You know, you have those that other school. What's that other school there? Harvard or something like that. I think it's called Harvard. So is there a Harvard MIT rivalry? Is that a rivalry, or is it like, no, they're no rivalry of ours? Trust me. I'm wondering how that all plays out, because there's a lot of sports rivalries, right? You know, there are a lot of college sports rivalries, but I'm wondering when it comes to brain power, are the MIT students being like, oh, Harvard, or is Harvard being like, oh, come on, MIT? How does that kind of work?
I think overall there's a huge admiration from both sides, right? It's a sports rivalry. It's a healthy rivalry in terms of just trying to approach better things. And the cultures of both institutes are different. But sorry, Rachel, go ahead.
I was going to say, I believe it's a friendly rivalry. I would say most people at MIT are more excited about the robotics competition than they are about a football. There's a friendly, healthy rivalry amongst different areas and groups at MIT and Harvard.
I have to ask this question, and I think that there are probably a lot of people that would ask this question too. And I know we didn't discuss this before, but as I said, I'm kind of a little fascinated with MIT. So we talked about the amount of the day that you spend on work. And it's a very large percentage, right? It's 74 point whatever for Henriette, right? We got that, which is still a lot. And I think 95 point. I know there wasn't a point for you. See, Rachel, you let me down there. You didn't give me any percent. You just gave me a whole number. I was expecting something a little bit more, a little more specific. But nonetheless, we're gonna go with that. But at MIT, I have this vision of the students. They're constantly studying, always in the library. I know they have a campus life, so I'm sure there are things to do. Obviously, Boston, Cambridge is your backyard. There's a lot to do there, but is there a social scene at MIT? I'm not giving a stereotype here. I'm curious to know, are people getting together and having a beer with books? Are they not drinking beer? How does what's a big Friday night at MIT look like?
Yeah, obviously know the charts, Papa. Rachel, you want to go?
Can you have fun at MIT? I know studying is fun, but can you actually have fun at MIT aside from the books?
Yes, studying and doing research is a big part of the life there, but so is, I believe a lot of people are very intentional of how they spend their time, and if there's social time, and there is, there are lots of different groups and diverse groups at MIT. They're specifically for gathering together. And it is people are just as intense and really good at the work that they do as they are in their outside activities. So whether that's like being part of the flying pilots club at MIT, they're really good at that. If it's being like at an a cappella club, they're really good at that as well, as well as the academics. So I'd say people I've met have been pretty well rounded.
Okay, acapella. I love acapella. I know what that is. What I have to ask, and I'm guessing it's a bunch of like aeronautical engineers, the flying club. What is that? Is that people that get together?
A lot of usually students who already have their pilot's license and go out and fly.
Got it. That's great. No, that's amazing. It sounds like you're saying work hard, play hard. Is that kind of
yeah? I think the part that Rachel is actually neglecting is there's one pub called the Charles Pub. It's it's integrated into the MIT facilities. People all the time meet there. It's so cool. You literally drink a beer with a Nobel Prize winner, right? All human based, and it's so cool. Everybody's playing games, drinking beer, literally have a good time. That's not just true for Friday evenings. The pub is full every evening. COVID obviously has diminished, but you know what I mean.
Work hard, play hard. I get that. That makes sense. And I do. It sounds like that you, and I really appreciate both of your energy and passion in the work that we've done together. And again, you're listening to the Eye on Life podcast. We are talking about Hosta Labs, which I'm going to give you a chance here to talk a little bit about the company. But Henriette and Rachel, who are the co-founders of Hosta Labs. And I want to ask you, and I think it was Henriette, you said before about you guys kind of fed off each other, right? There was a certain amount of energy that you had when you met. There was a click, you clicked, there was a connection. And even just hearing you talk about your educational and academic work at MIT, you sound energized by that. How did you take that energy and apply that into a startup? Because a startup is not for the faint of heart. We know that, right? It's a challenge. There's a lot of, you're never really on vacation. You're never really off, right? You're never really off the clock.
Yeah.
Tell us a little about how you've applied the energy from your academic work and your connection, your partnership to get, your partnership into Hosta Labs, and also tell us what Hosta Labs is exactly.
Well, the academic side, I think the stronger connection is actually made by Rachel here, because, wow, Rachel, you have studied extremely hard to achieve so much knowledge in computer vision architecture, right? So you're combining that, but I will leave that to you to talk more about this. I think for me, I'm more a practitioner than a PhD character, right? I did my MBA at MIT. Prior to that, I worked 12 years in automotive consulting and fashion retail, mainly in strategy development and restructuring, etc., and process project management. So the energy I definitely bring in is like working off projects, making sure we are reaching the next milestone. We both do that, don't get me wrong, but I think my contribution is understanding business matters very strongly from the practitioner side that I've obtained over so many years, and then being able to bring that to traction together with our team, which is so fantastic, and see how seeing this company progress and everything becoming tangible. Wow, I can't tell you how rewarding that is. But Rachel, please, I don't want to take too much of that question away, because I think you have so much to contribute to that.
Yeah, no, I would say, how has MIT and it's like my work ethic there, but prior to MIT, I was also practicing as an architect, right? Wanted to see improvements in the space, and having gotten to MIT and apply the intellectual rigor that happens there, the intellectual challenges, and being surrounded by awesome people who have such great ideas as in solving problems. And then the transition in doing a startup was pretty easy, I'd say, particularly because it is such an intellectual problem. It's from all that, not just from technology, but from the business side and from all aspects of it, from operations to sales to everything. So it's certainly the intellectual rigor has gone to the startup area as well.
And how is, again, you both have really talked a lot about innovation in the time that we've known each other, and I want to make sure we express that, right? And I want to know, what is Hosta Labs doing to change the world? And you really, and literally, you are changing the world, and a lot of the work that you're doing. But I want to give people an opportunity to know exactly who you are and what you do. But how are you? Again, there are a lot of different startups that are doing great things. There's the insurtech industry. We know that. That's how we met. But I'm wondering from both of you how the work that you're doing with Hosta Labs, why somebody would want to engage you in the work that you do, and how you're kind of changing innovation, changing the world, changing the way people view things. I think that's a really important part of life, and I think it's part of the work that you do. I'd love to hear what you have to say about that. Either one of you.
Rachel, go ahead.
Yeah. So, how does the work that we do, essentially, what is Hosta, right?
What is Hosta, and how are you changing lives? How are you changing the way people look at things? How are you changing the way people do business? How are you changing the way people live?
Yeah. So particularly, like I mentioned, I practiced as an architect, and being an architect, I had to assess spaces manually with our team. And that means going into a space with a pen and clipboard, tape measure, expensive equipment, and turning those into technical drawings. On top of that, this was back in LA, you'd have to sit in traffic if you wanted more data. It's a very tedious process. It's time consuming and it's super exhausting. So I just knew there had to be a better way. In any case, now what Hosta does, now you can just take out your smartphone or any kind of camera, take a picture of your space, of your room, and we can tell you how much drywall do you have in that space. What are the measurements? what are the, what's composed in in that room? How many kitchen cabinets do you have between upper and base cabinets, and all the materials that are in there, all from a simple picture in a couple of minutes. So that in itself is a problem that I have, that millions of people have in the insurance industry, which Henriette can talk more about how we're addressing our solution in that particular area.
In the insurance industry, it's a huge search field to get data from simple images or videos, because it allows self-service solutions. So it enables and empowers a policyholder to provide information and to, on the policyholder's behalf, get more certainty about the replacement values, to understand whether with the premium you're paying to your insurance carrier for your property, you actually have the whole property covered. So we are B2B solution, right? We are aiming to integrate with insurance carriers, but I try to give you a perspective here from a policyholder's point. So we provide accurate replacement values and identify risks from simple images or videos for the underwriting process to make sure that the premium actually matches the value of your property and you are properly insured. When you renew your policy, you can again take videos or images of what has changed. And then the insurance carrier can give you an adjusted quote, again, to make sure that you are fully insured, right? Because disasters happening more and more. And then ultimately on the claims side, we help you to get your claim repaired very, very quickly. You take a video or like a picture of the claim, and we help the insurance carrier to estimate the mitigation measures and replacement, like the raw material quantity that needs to be replaced in order to repair the damage, so that the value for the damage gets transferred quickly and a contractor can start working on the damage and repairing everything, so you feel safe in your home again.
So this, I want to be very clear to the people who are listening and or watching the show. Do not sit there, right, and think that, well, I don't have to worry about that. That'll never happen to me. First off, it's 2020. So who knows what's going to happen in the next hour here, right? But you're talking about, anything that can happen to your home or business, it could be flooding, it could be a fire. You're talking about that. And obviously when that happens, you're in a horrible state of mind anyway. Right. So, you've had, let's say you've had property damage to your home. That's obviously very emotional. It's emotionally draining. You might not be thinking straight. You might not remember everything. So you guys, you're both kind of coming in and helping with the accuracy of kind of helping get back on your feet, replacing what was maybe lost. We can all, whether you've had something happen to your home or your business or you haven't, I think we can all relate to discomfort when something, we've all been in an auto accident, right? Or something like that. So it's the same kind of thing. So here's my question for you. And that was more on the business side, but I do have a question for you, because I've always kind of had, when I've worked in office settings, and maybe the startup community is different, I sort of feel like I sort of look at coworkers almost like neighbors, right? In the sense that I want to be friendly. I can sit there and chat for, a few minutes, but I don't necessarily want them to be my best friend, right? Because if for some reason you have to have a discussion about something in the office, or let's say there's a property dispute, you don't want to have to be a personal thing, right? So it's going to be friendly, nice, cordial. You want to be able to relate to them, because especially in an office setting, right? It's nice to have, relationships with people. It's easier to get things done that way. What are your thoughts on being social in the office? And I'm curious to know, from the startup standpoint, when the two of you, do you guys get together, have lunch and talk about things other than work, your colleagues, other business partners? It's not all about work, right? You might sit there and have a conversation about something else. Is that common practice? Is that acceptable? I'm wondering kind of what you think of from that kind of cultural standpoint.
Yeah, I actually think it's key to understand what's going on in a personal life. And obviously, I don't mean spreading any kind of secrets or your deepest kind of inside thoughts, but sharing where you stand right now in life in total, right? Helps everyone to understand why you might react in certain situations the way you react or something like that, where you stand, what's on your mind. And obviously it helps everyone to provide a setting in which everyone flourishes. I totally get your point of, well, do you want to completely kind of merge life and work? And no, potentially you don't, right? but understanding to a certain extent what's driving you personally, I think, is key to build up a proper culture and help everyone to, well, to have a work environment that he or she is enjoying.
Agreed. And I don't, and I hope I didn't sound like it's not that it's not that I've been standoffish. I enjoy coming in and, maybe talking about the football game from that weekend, or talking about something. But Rachel, to me, there's also there's some people that share a lot at work, which is great. I think that good for them. I think that's great. I'm not judging that, but I also feel like there are boundaries that I like to keep separate from my coworkers. What do you think, Rachel?
Right. No, I mean, we actually put time in place in our workflow, actually, to have a social hour, or we have our Hosta social, or right after this we're gonna be having our team lunchroom session, right, where it's not necessarily always about work, but it can be, and it's a time and an opportunity to talk about things that are sometimes not in any agenda, but to be ourselves and express ourselves however we'd like to.
I think that's great, and I do have to say, usually I do this at the beginning of the show, but I have a pet peeve and I want to ask you about it. Again, I usually do this at the beginning, but I just thought of it. So again, it's good to have the relationships. That's huge, right? I'm a big proponent of relationships, partnerships. But one of my pet peeves is, and it's a little different now because we're all, most of us are remote. But I guess it's called the hoverer, right? Somebody who hovers outside your office when you're on a call, and you know what I mean? Like you're on the call, and you might even make eye contact. And I've had this before. I had a coworker in a job years ago who always hovered. And I even said to him, like, I'd lip to that. I'll be 1 second. And they still stayed there. And I always try not to do like, I might walk down to someone's office and I might like say, oh, I went, walking. Oh, see, they're on the phone. I'll come back. But am I overreacting? I just don't like somebody listening to my conversation. I know I could close the door, but I have an open door pod. I don't like people that hover. It's a big pet peeve of mine. I don't like people that hover. I don't like it when they do it in my personal space and in my personal life, and I don't like it in the office. Am I overreacting?
Well, I hear you, right? In terms of, especially if you have very kind of private discussions or things that might be confidential, you don't want everybody to listen in. But I think it's becoming the new normal. I mean, open workspaces are open workspaces. You can, for a very private call, obviously go into your little box and have a call there. But I get your point. Obviously, it's needing a balance, right? And for people to understand certain personal space so that everybody can flourish is important. But again, it comes down to, do I understand the other person? Do I understand how that person is working, what she needs to perform best?
And I want to also be, and Rachel, I want to get your viewpoint on this too, but let me say two things. If it's the president and CEO, fine. The phone's being hung up. I'm talking to the president and CEO. That's fine. Or my boss, whoever that is. So that's fine. And I will say this: if I was ever in an office and either one of you came to my office, I would hang up the phone right away, and I would not even make you wait. But I just feel like, Rachel, I mean, don't hover. If it was a personal phone call, I would have closed the door. So obviously, if the phone call is not that personal, the door is open, it's fine. I just don't understand why. And then the person like leaves, and you kind of see that shadow there. There's like a shadow, they're still there. It's like, just come back. I don't know how long I'm gonna. It doesn't take much to annoy me these days, but Rachel, I'm probably overreacting.
No, I mean, I believe each person has their preference, and typically in those situations, if depending on the call, I'll go into a conference room, pre-COVID, essentially. Right. And if the other person wants to join that call, or wasn't on the invite, then I'd ask that person if they'd like to join that meeting, if they think that they should be part of that meeting, if that's why they're hovering around.
If you engage them in a meeting, they'll never come back. They'll be like, oh, okay, I'm not doing that again. If I go down to his office, I'm gonna have to go to another meeting. I will say, just to put a bow on that, I had somebody in the person I was talking about, right? They waited outside my office for about 10 minutes. I was on a call. I don't remember what I was talking about. This was years ago. They waited outside I saw the shadow. I heard papers kind of, crumbling and everything. 10 minutes, and they came into my office and they asked me if I wanted sushi. So, I almost felt bad. Part of me was irritated, like, really, you're waiting outside to ask me about lunch? But the other part of me was like, that's really nice. That's really nice that you waited 10 minutes to ask me about lunch. I was also sort of flattered by that. We're gonna wrap up here, but I do have. I'm not gonna say I have one more question because it probably ends up turning into 2 or 3. What excites you about the future? As far as work and Hosta Labs and just personally for you, where there's a lot of uncertainty right now. There's a lot of, change. There's a lot of pivot in what we're doing, and how we operate, how we do business, how we interact with other people, right? I would have loved to have done this with you, with both of you in person, but obviously we can't do that. So what kind of excites you about the future of your work and how that work kind of impacts your personal life as well? And Henriette, let's start with you.
Okay. Well, for me, it's not just the future, it's literally every day. I am enjoying so much to be surrounded by so much intellect, by the opportunity to learn new things, right? By the incredible fast growth that is now tangible to us. And I would argue, in terms of future, I'm just so much intrigued and fascinated by this opportunity to shape an entire industry.
Well, you're on your way, and before I forget, before I get to Rachel here, I also do want to give you an opportunity. Where can people find out more information about Hosta Labs and the services that you provide? Again, we're talking about creating. There's innovation, there's value. We're talking about the insure tech and insurance and protecting people's assets, which I know always sounds very sexy to people, but when you need it, trust me, when you need it, and then when the time comes when your basement floods, you'll be very happy to have Henriette and Rachel on your side. But where can people find more information?
Yeah, join us on LinkedIn. It's Hosta Labs. My personal LinkedIn is Henriette Fleischmann, and reach out to info@hostalabs.com.
And we're going to expand your social media network shortly too. So get ready for that as well. I know we've talked about that. Rachel, what about you? What excites you? What keeps you moving, keeps you, the adrenaline flowing for each day? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I just like to think that this is not a job, it's a mission. It's building a team that together sees our collective vision and focus while striving to create a great startup culture. It's also knowing that each day that we put into this, it contributes to making a significant impact for those that we build or advanced solutions for, and that we're creating a valuable enterprise in the long term. Part of that is also the excitement of the intellectual challenges, and that's in collaboration with a lot of vigorous mix of people and ideas.
Well, as I said, I the reason why, great, by the way, I love that it's the mission, and that it's not just a job and it's not just work. It's a mission for you. I think that's inspiring. Actually, you should have a shirt made up that says that on there. I bet you that would sell really, really well. And you guys are entrepreneurial, obviously. So is Chris Bossert, who manages mustny.com, COVID masks. And the reason why I always try not to say this is my final question is because I always lie, because it's never my final question. But this one is going to be, because I want to let you guys go. Are you guys ready? This is a huge question. I just want you guys to be ready. I always like to make sure that my guests are prepared. I don't want any surprise this year, but I just take a deep breath, and I need you to answer this very, very honest question here. Okay. You talked about that pub right on the MIT campus. What was that pub called?
The Muddy Charles.
What was it? I'm sorry.
Muddy Charles.
Muddy Charles.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's say at some point, we're doing work together, and post-COVID, right? We decide, hey, let's go out, let's go grab a drink. We're gonna grab happy hour. The three of us, we're going out. We're gonna hang out. We're gonna head over to the pub over on the MIT campus there. Okay. And we have made a pact with each other that we are not going to talk about work at all. Okay. So my question to both of you is, we're not talking about work. So what are we talking about? Rachel, let's start with you. We're having a beer or a ginger ale, whatever you don't have to drink. It's fine. I might have a bourbon. What are we talking about, Rachel? That's not work related.
What Henriette and I do is that there's also a stack of games on the corner there, the Muddy Charles, and we're playing Jenga and talking about how to keep that tower from falling.
So I have to ask a question. So you lead me to another question now before I get to Henriette here. Okay. So if you are having a couple of drinks and you're imbibing a little bit, does the Jenga become easier or does it become harder after a couple of drinks?
Definitely easier. No, I'm just kidding. Harder.
Well, I was thinking it might be looser. Like I'm always, if I'm playing that game, I'm stressed. But if I've had a couple of beers, I'm probably like, all right, whatever. I don't care if it falls or not. And maybe there's got to be some engineer. What I would do is if the competitive person in me would grab one of the engineers that's probably at the table next to us, right? One of those aeronautical engineers. I'd be like, what's my best strategy here to beat Rachel and Henriette on this game of Jenga? That would be what I do. But Henriette, what are we talking about? Are we playing games or are we having a conversation about something else?
I would love to hear stories about your life, the funniest, the most extreme, etc. I love to get to know human in that way.
Well, let's say that's a date then. We're going to do that. Cambridge. I'll travel to you guys post-COVID. Who knows when that'll be? But Hosta Labs, you guys are leaders. You are innovators. You are changing the game in so many ways. And again, on a serious note, you do great work, and it's been a pleasure doing work with you. It's inspiring, and your energy and your adrenaline certainly rubs off on the work that we do from the marketing and branding side. So I want to thank both of you for talking not only about Hosta Labs, but getting a little personal with us about how how happy hours are spent, and some of the things that about that work-life balance. Because again, at the dinner table at night, I know a lot of us get home and talk about our jobs. It's a big part of what we do. And it's a big part about keeping an eye on life, which is the whole point of this podcast for the people. So I want to thank Henriette Fleischmann and Rachelle Villalon, who are the co-founders of Hosta Labs, helping us keep an eye on life today. Thank you both. And I want to, we asked you that question about the future, but I want to wish you both the very, very best, and looking forward to our continued partnership together.
Likewise. Thanks, Brian.
In the meantime, everybody else.
Thank you, Brian. Very good to you.
We will talk soon. And in the meantime, I hope everyone else who's listening and watching the show, whether you're at work, whether you're at the local tavern, wear your masks, and of course, keep an eye on life.